Sometimes the most revealing economic stories arrive quietly, disguised as routine corporate announcements that barely attract attention. Yet beneath the surface, they expose something profound about how nations organize power, investment, and work. That is exactly the case with Toyota's Canadian plants being ranked among the highest quality automotive manufacturing facilities in the world, surpassing not only their American counterparts but also many factories in Japan, the company's home base. On the surface, this sounds like a simple feel-good success story. A company wins awards, workers receive well-deserved praise, and Canada enjoys a moment of national pride. But when we look closer, the story becomes much more uncomfortable, especially for policymakers in Washington. If Canada, operating under the same North American trade rules, using similar suppliers, and facing the same global competition, can consistently produce world-class vehicles, then the explanation for American manufacturing decline cannot simply be blamed on unfair trade, outsourcing, or jobs being stolen by foreign workers. Instead, the evidence forces us to confront something deeper and harder to admit. The real problem lies in decades of policy choices and corporate strategies that prioritized short-term financial gains over long-term productive capacity, stability, and human skill. Toyota's Canadian plants did not become global benchmarks by accident. Their success reflects a long period in which Canada treated manufacturing as a strategic national capability, rather than just a cost to be minimized. Governments coordinated with industry and unions to protect training pipelines, maintain apprenticeships, encourage cooperative labor relations, and create regulatory environments that support sustained, predictable investment. The outcome was not flashy, dramatic growth, but something even more powerful: stability. Stability allowed workers to develop expertise instead of constantly fearing layoffs. It encouraged managers to focus on durable systems, not temporary cost-cutting. It reassured communities that factories would not simply vanish, giving local institutions confidence to support infrastructure, suppliers, and technical education. Over time, that combination of trust, continuity, and discipline produced excellence that compounds year after year. Meanwhile, American workers were often told a more dramatic and emotionally satisfying story, one in which global competitors cheated, trade agreements betrayed them, and tariffs could somehow force companies to return home. But that narrative, while politically useful, overlooks how corporate priorities in the United States shifted toward financialization, rewarding stock buybacks, cost reductions, and executive bonuses more than patient investment in machinery, training, and quality systems. Training budgets became expendable, maintenance was deferred, experienced workers were replaced with cheaper, less secure labor. Plants were judged not primarily by what they produced, but by how aggressively they could cut costs in the short term. Predictably, quality problems grew, recalls increased, communities were hollowed out, and the industrial foundation weakened. When we compare those outcomes with Toyota's Canadian performance, the contrast reveals that decline was not inevitable. It was chosen, shaped by incentives that favored extraction over creation. That helps explain why leaders in Washington have not rushed to celebrate Canada's success. Acknowledging it would mean admitting that tariff threats and nationalist rhetoric cannot substitute for real industrial strategy. It would force recognition that union suppression, deregulation for its own sake, and unconditional corporate tax cuts did not rebuild capability but often accelerated its erosion. And once people begin to see that decline resulted from domestic decisions rather than external enemies, they start asking uncomfortable questions about who argued for those policies and who profited from them. That is why Toyota's Canadian operations function almost like a mirror held up to North America, confronting us with the realization that excellence arises from institutions, culture, and governance, not from slogans. The same company operates in both countries under the same global marketplace, yet one environment nurtured patient investment while the other rewarded rapid extraction. In practical terms, workers feel the difference in their daily lives. A system built on long-term commitment produces safer workplaces, higher wages, predictable schedules, and communities that can plan for the future. A system driven by short-term logic produces anxiety, constant restructuring, and a sense that effort never leads to security. And while this story unfolds in the auto sector, its implications extend far beyond cars. We see the same contrast in healthcare systems stretched thin by profit pressures, in schools relying on temporary funding cycles, and an infrastructure that deteriorates because preventive maintenance rarely wins elections. Everywhere we look, when short-term gain becomes the dominant organizing principle, quality erodes. Conversely, when societies align institutions around patient investment, skills compound and reliability spreads. The lesson here is not that the United States should try to imitate Canada exactly, nor that globalization played no role in shaping outcomes. Instead, the real lesson is that industrial strength depends on systems designed to support it. You cannot threaten factories into excellence, you cannot bully corporations into valuing craftsmanship, and you cannot tariff your way into world-class production when the underlying workforce, training pipelines, and institutional relationships are weakened. Rebuilding American manufacturing will require reconnecting industrial policy with national purpose, tying public incentives to long-term commitments, restoring constructive relationships between labor and management, and recognizing workers not as disposable costs but as repositories of knowledge. Toyota's record in Canada shows that when societies invest consistently, when governments treat production as a strategic asset, and when companies internalize the value of experienced labor, excellence emerges quietly, steadily, and sustainably. That is why this story matters so much. It disrupts the easy explanation that decline is fate. It shows that another configuration of capitalism, one that rewards building rather than stripping, can thrive within the same global context. And it challenges every country, especially the United States, to decide what kind of economy it truly wants. One defined by quarterly performance metrics and perpetual anxiety, or one grounded in competence, stability, and shared prosperity. In the end, the recognition earned by Toyota's Canadian plants is less about trophies than about truth. It reminds us that the future of manufacturing, like the future of any complex system, depends on whether leaders are willing to prioritize long-term value over short-term applause. And once that truth comes into focus, it becomes increasingly difficult to pretend that decline is unavoidable, or to keep blaming forces beyond our control, when the real issue has always been the choices we make about how and for whom our economies are designed to work. In the end, the story of Toyota's Canadian factories is not simply about a corporation outperforming its peers. It is a reminder that the path to durable prosperity is neither mysterious nor inaccessible. Societies that make serious, consistent investments in people, institutions, and productive capacity tend to reap the rewards. Societies that chase shortcuts eventually pay the price. Canada's achievement shows that excellence can emerge quietly, without spectacle, when decision-makers resist the temptation to trade tomorrow for today. For the United States, this moment should not be a cause for embarrassment, but an invitation to rethink. It is an opportunity to move beyond symbolic battles over tariffs and slogans and instead rebuild the deeper foundations that make world-class manufacturing possible: trust, skill, stability, and shared responsibility. If policymakers have the courage to learn from this example, they can help restore confidence not only in American industry, but in the idea that democratic economies are capable of long-term stewardship. If they do not, others will continue to set the standard. The real question, then, is not whether excellence is achievable — it clearly is — but whether we still have the vision and patience required to pursue it.